Well, hello ladies and gentlemen, and welcome back to OLC TV for some more Total War 3 Kingdoms. This time, as part of our Real Battle Tactics series, we're looking at the Battle of Yan Ford, part of the greater Guandu campaign between Cao Cao and Yuan Shao. Battle of Yan Ford was actually between Wen Chou and Liu Bei versus Cao Cao, because at this stage Liu Bei was working for Yuan Shao. But unfortunately, there is no Wen Chou unique figure art for me to use, so his boss Yuan Shao is the stand-in for this initial thing. So let's have a look at what has been going on up until this point. So we had a situation before where Cao Cao had advanced to Borma to defeat Yan Liang, who was besieging the place, and in doing so he annihilated Yan Liang. Well, Guandu personally killed Yan Liang. At the same time, you had Zhang Ba over in the east, still attacking Yuan Tan, keeping him pinned. You had raids from Zhang Yan and the like, but they weren't doing that much. And Wei Chong was holding his area pretty well, and Xiaodun was not under attack at all. So everything was relatively stable. Elsewhere, the direct fight was coming from Yuan Shao now, who, thanks to some maneuvering by Cao Cao, was now at Yan Ford. What happened straight after the siege of Borma is we can assume that Guanyu returned to work to Liu Bei. Liu Bei at this stage was with Yuan Shao, but up until this point he had not taken a frontline role because Guanyu was effectively being held prisoner by Cao Cao. Had he been fighting the front lines, chances are Guanyu would have been executed. So we can assume that having fulfilled the sort of bargain, I guess, with Cao Cao, having basically repaid Cao Cao's kindness, Cao Cao did allow him to go, and it is recorded he allowed him to go. A lot less like the, going through and fighting all the people like Yen Romance, more a case of here's a letter, thank you very much. Whatever. And there was definitely some confusion about it, because Guanyu did probably leave without saying goodbye, as it were. But he probably by this stage had returned to Liu Bei and was therefore over at Yuan Shao's side. What happened next because of this is Cao Cao decided that Borma was not a position he wanted to hold anymore, so he combined his forces with Liu Yan, who had been holding it. He still had Zhang Liao in his force leading the van, and they made a plan to return back to the base camp at Guandu and reinforce and set up there, which meant that he was also pulling the likes of Yu Jin away from Yan Ford, because Yu Jin, who had been up until that point leading successful raids into Yuan Shao's territory, did not have the forces to be able to defend against Yuan Shao's entire army, which, even after Borma and the loss there, we can expect to be around 100,000 troops. So this is the Guandu campaign map as it starts. Chongyu is still all the way over in Zhuanchong with his 700 troops. He's absolutely fine. Yu Jin is held up at Yan Ford, facing off against Yuan Shao, and Borma is now got Liu Yan and Cao Cao there. Cao Cao takes Liu Yan to Yu Jin at Yan Ford, and they combine their forces, and probably Yu Jin goes on ahead. We don't know exactly how it worked. And the baggage train is there with the main force, which is basically all the refugees, all the loot, everything else from Borma. Okay? Cao Cao has that with his main force, the vanguard goes ahead, and at this stage, Yuan Shao says, right, time to attack. Let's push across Yan Ford. So he releases Liu Bei with Wen Chou to go forward and attack Cao Cao and press Cao Cao, and Liu Bei's force does exactly that. So let's have a look at the battle map. Now, we don't know exact numbers, okay? We know from the reports that Cao Cao had 600 cavalry with him and was a little bit ahead of the baggage train. We know that Liu Bei and Wen Chou had thousands of troops, possibly around 5,000 troops. We know that they had more infantry than they had cavalry, and they probably had around 1,000 to 2,000 cavalry, okay? But these are estimates, they're not 100% accurate. And what happens is this: as Liu Bei and Wen Chou are starting to scout across the Yellow River, they've crossed the ford and they're just having a look. Cao Cao is coming forward with his troops, and they start to make a camp at a place called the Southern Slope, just south of this dike, which keeps them hidden. As they're there, Cao Cao's scouts start to say, oh, we're seeing some enemy troops, there's cavalry coming across, they're getting really nearby. And Cao Cao's officers are saying, yeah, maybe we should move away because they're going to be coming in force, we can't win this battle, let's just pull back, reform with the main body of the troops, and then we can fight them. But Cao Cao says no. As this happens, there's more shouts, there's more troops coming, and again the call comes up, right, Cao Cao, you got to pull out. But Xun Yu's cousin, Xun Yu and Guo Jiao were two of Cao Cao's, they were his two main battlefield strategists who travelled with him from battlefield to battlefield. By this stage, of course, Guo Jiao is not noted to being part of this battle. But Xun Yu was definitely with him, and Xun Yu basically berates these officers and said, "You're so stupid, we can lay a trap. We've got an opportunity to beat these guys here." And so Cao Cao tells his men to get off their horses, keep their horses hidden, keep their heads down, and just wait. And what he's planning is this. This is another one of Cao Cao's great ways of outthinking the enemy, using a small group of elite fighters in the right position, rather than like a headlong charge like Guan Yu did, just outthinking his enemy. Because what's coming next is the baggage train. We don't know which officers are in charge of the baggage train. We know they have some troops with them, but these guys are not really prepared for this type of engagement. And Cao Cao and his cavalry, his 600 men, just sit there and watch, because as the baggage train starts to advance, Liu Bei and Wen Chou's troops see it, and they get suckered into it. And you may remember that something like this happens at the Battle of Anzhong as well, where he basically lets the baggage train loose as a sacrifice, and Liu Bei and Jiang Shu get suckered into it, and then he comes out from behind a dike that he has either expanded or dug himself. His troops have dug overnight, and they come out and they smash and they rout the army. This is exactly the same idea. And he's had practice of it, because only, a year previous, maybe 2 years previous, 18 months previous, he'd done the exact same trick. So baggage train comes out and you have reports of him telling the troops to actually scatter the loot as well, make it look like everything's all over the place, so it really attracts the enemy. And Liu Bei and Wen Chou and their troops just go nuts for it. They go headlong at it and start to loot it. At this point, Cao Cao gives an order to his cavalry, mount up. And they all mount up and charge in one motion, we are told. As they charge, they hit Wen Chou's formation first, and Wen Chou is recorded to have died. Whether he died because of the combat or whether he was executed afterwards, we don't know. I like to assume he died during the combat, because usually they would state that someone was captured in a source, and there may be a source that I have not read, but I have not seen a source that says that Wen Chou was captured. What definitely did not happen is what happens in Romance, where Xu Huang tries to get him, and then he's fought off by other troops, and then Guan Yu eventually kills him. That did not happen. Guan Yu, we can safely assume, was over with Yuan Shao at this stage, because Liu Bei took part in this battle. I must emphasize this: had Liu Bei taken part in a battle against Cao Cao whilst Guan Yu was with Cao Cao, chances are Guan Yu would have died. Why was Guan Yu not part of this battle? Well, again, because he just returned. There were huge questions about Liu Bei's position within Yuan Shao's court as well, because of course Guan Yu was fighting for the other side, all that stuff. So we can assume that Guan Yu was keeping his head down and wasn't fully trusted by Yuan Shao. Liu Bei obviously wasn't fully trusted by Yuan Shao, otherwise he wouldn't have been out there with Wen Chou. And he may have just been in hiding in Liu Bei's forces. Also, he had a relationship with Zhang Liao, with Xu Huang, and others, as well as Cao Cao as well. So, by the moralities of the time, he may have felt a level of residual loyalty to Cao Cao, and therefore removed himself from this fight at this stage. But whatever happens, Wen Chou died. This caused chaos within Wen Chou's forces. When a leader is killed, certainly in the early days of this period, at the breakup of the Han and the beginning of the Three Kingdoms period, the troops simply were not elite enough to deal with it. There are very few cases of armies being able to be held together after their leader dies. And those cases only exist where the troops have a level of experience and discipline, like Gongsun Zan's forces after Jie Bridge, Cao Cao in several occasions, Sun Jian after he dies being held together by his brothers. It doesn't happen very often. When it does, you're talking about the best of the best troops available at that time. And Wen Chou did not have that. Yuan Shao's armies may have been fighting for a long period of time against Gongsun Zan, but the vast majority of their troops, the greater number of their troops were not probably hugely loyal to Yuan Shao, let's say. So when the officer died, they started to wobble. Cao Cao, of course, is there with his elite troops. He has some top-tier officers in there as well. We can assume Xunyo was there. We can assume as well that he had some of his bodyguards there. There is no mention of the Tiger Warriors specifically being there, but it wouldn't surprise me to hear that people like Shu Chu were available there. Possibly Zhang Liao, possibly Yu Jin. There's a lot of big names involved in this setup, so he had some big name officers there. He had some very solid troops, elite troops, charged out of nowhere and caused a complete rout. So what's the aftermath of this? Well, the aftermath is this. Yan Liang is dead, Wen Chou is dead. They are two of Yuan Shao's most respected generals. Okay, they're not necessarily his top level generals, but they are two of his most respected fighting generals, and they are both dead. What has happened is that Cao Cao has successfully defended the Yellow River from being crossed. Yuan Shao has not managed to force a crossing at all. Cao Cao has pulled back from Borma, and he's now going to pull back further from Yan Ford. Because even though he's won this stuff, his forces are not in a position to be able to take out Yuan Shao at Yan Ford. He has set up at Guandu a line of fortifications that are just insane. Towers, mud walls, all of that stuff. And Yuan Shao's going to go there and set up a similar amount of stuff, and they're going to fight it out at Guandu. There is now a huge level of demoralization going on within Yuan Shao's camp. Officers are starting to doubt the orders they're being given. Certainly there's already been dissent because amongst the strategists, one of the top generals, because Yuan Shao has 3 top generals, one of them is sacked, and his troops are absorbed by another. So basically that just leaves Zhu Shou and Chen Yuchong in command of the armies. People like Zhang He, who's a very, very talented general, are still loyal, but it's not going to be very long before they start to really doubt the commands they're given and openly disobey them. This is prior to betraying them. Xu You as well, another one of the strategists and advisors in Yuan Shao's court, is now openly criticizing some of the commanders, so it's causing dissent in Yuan Shao's camp. So even though now that Cao Cao has pulled back from the Yellow River, it seems like Yuan Shao can get a foothold over the other side, and he does advance to create a foothold and create his own siege lines. The dissent within the camp is now so great that his chances of winning are small, certainly heavily reduced. Also, with Cao Cao pulling back, we can assume he instituted a level of scorched earth as well, because we know that Yuan Shao coming down, crossing the Yellow River, as soon as you cross the Yellow River, his supply lines were really, really, really stretched. Cao Cao had set up the Tuntian system, they were getting food and everything else, but we know as well from the records that Cao Cao was running out of food in a short period of time and had to be persuaded by Xunyu to stay in the fight. The same thing is happening in Yuan Shao's court, except Yuan Shao is that much further from his base, so the food takes that much longer to get to him. And Cao Cao knew this, and that is part of his reason for pulling back to Guandu. But of course, if Cao Cao loses at Guandu, the road is open to Shu, and he will lose the Emperor and most probably his life. So it is another one where he's putting himself in one of these positions where he's into his death place again. Well, anyway, ladies and gentlemen, that is it from me today. I really hope you've enjoyed this. I'm sorry it took a little bit longer than usual to be published. But that's another example of Cao Cao using the oblique approach to defeat a greater force with a small number of elite units. And he does this throughout his career. He is still young enough at this stage to be fighting personally himself. As he gets older, of course, he does a lot less of this. But yeah, there's some great stuff coming up. We are going to be looking at the likes of White Wolf Mountain, that campaign, which is just an incredible strategic masterpiece. It has to be one of the greats of all time. So we're going to be looking at that, so look out for that in the near future. I've been putting that together now for about 2 weeks. So I really hope you enjoy that when it comes out. But if you have liked this, please feel free to leave a like and subscribe. I really love hearing your comments about this. If there is a particular battle or area that you want to know more about, please let me know. I have had a request to do a little bit more on the Yellow Turbans, so just to let you know, I am putting something together about the Yellow Turbans as well. But that's down the pipeline. I have a couple of other things that will be coming out first, but that will be coming out soon, so do look out for that as well. If you have any other requests, please let me know. I look forward to seeing you next time for more Total War. Thank you very much for joining me. Bye bye.